Hey guys, so in this video we are going to talk about present worth analysis. Now, one of the main goals of an engineering economy study is to evaluate and compare alternatives on an economic basis. In this video, one of the techniques used to analyze and select alternatives will be discussed, the present worth analysis. So ito yung i-discuss natin. Now, the present worth analysis is used to compare alternatives by converting all cash flows to present money at the MARR or yung tinatawag natin na minimum attractive rate of return. So, lahat ng cash flows, dadalhin lang natin or kukunin natin yung equivalent present worths nila. First, we are going to apply the present worth analysis for equal life alternatives. Now, the present worth comparison of alternatives with equal lives is straightforward. So, yung present worth P natin, it is renamed as PW of the alternative or the present worth of the alternative. Again, as the name implies, present worth, this method transforms all future costs and revenues to equivalent monetary units now. That is, all future cash flows are converted to present amounts at a specific rate of return. So, yun na nga, itong tinatawag na rate of return or yung interest rate natin dito is the MARR or the minimum attractive rate of return. And then, in choosing the alternative, we will simply select the alternative that has the numerically larger or largest present worth value. So, ibig sabihin, yung may pinakamalaking revenue or may pinakamaliit na cost. Now, if the alternatives have the same capacities for the same time period or yung life ng alternative, the equal service requirement is met. If this condition is satisfied, simply calculate the present worth value at the stated MARR for each alternative. And then, yun na nga, the alternative with the present worth that is numerically largest, so yung less negative or more positive, yun yung pipiliin natin. Okay, so let's apply this to our first example. A university lab is a research contractor to NASA for in-space fuel systems that are hydrogen and methanol based. During lab research, 3 equal service machines need to be evaluated economically. So sabi dito, perform the present worth analysis with the cost shown below, and then yung minimum attractive rate of return is 10% per year. We have here 3 alternatives. So we have an electric-powered, gas-powered, and solar-powered machines. And then yung corresponding first cost, annual operating cost, salvage value, and then yung life nila nakalagay din dito sa table. Again, first thing that you should do here is to draw the cash flow diagrams. So for each alternative, gagawa nyo ng cash flow diagram. Yung first cost dito, obviously cost nga siya, no? So negative itong sign natin dito. So negative value siya because from our perspective, this is a cost. Mababawasan yung pera natin. Then same goes for the annual operating cost, negative din siya. And then for the salvage value, so itong tinatawag na salvage value is the estimated resale value of an asset at the end of its useful life. So kung ibebenta natin yung machine at the end of its life or matapos natin itong gamitin, ilan ba or magkano ba yung posible nating makuha na amount? So yun yung salvage value niya. Since marireceive natin itong pera na to, kapag nabenta natin yung machine at the end of its life, this is positive. Ito yung sa first alternative natin. So yung present worth niya is simply calculated at I equal to 10%, and then yung N naman natin is 8 years. To solve for the present worth, so itong first cost, nandito siya sa present. And then for the present worth of the annual operating cost, so take note, uniform amounts lang ito every year. So annuity, sabihin gagamitin lang natin yung uniform series present worth factor o yung P/A factor. So fully naalala nyo pa yon, no? That is 1 plus I raised to N minus 1 over I times 1 plus I raised to N. And then for the present worth of the salvage value, so take note, positive yung sign niya. And to get the present worth, gagamitin lang natin yung single payment present worth factor or yung P/F factor. That is simply 1 over 1 plus I raised to N. So in total, the present worth for the first alternative is equal to negative $9,208.13. Now, take note na negative yung lumabas na value. Ibig sabihin, cost ito. Okay? And then, applying similar procedure for the analysis of the second and third alternative. Same pa rin, cash flow diagrams. And then, yung present worth nila. For the present worth of the gas-powered machine, that will be negative $7,071.17. And then for the solar powered, that will be negative $6,220.10. So yung pipiliin dapat natin dito will be the alternative that will give us the lesser or least cost. Okay, so maliit lang yung cost natin. Therefore, that will be the solar powered machine, no? Kasi siya yung may pinakamaliit na cost, $6,220.10. Okay, next we are going to discuss naman the present worth analysis for different life alternatives. So unlike doon sa previous example natin na similar lahat yung lives ng mga alternatives natin, dito naman iba-iba. Okay? So when the present worth method is used to compare mutually exclusive alternatives that have different lives, the equal service requirement must be met. So yung procedure na ginamit natin in our previous section, yun pa rin yung gagamitin natin dito, with one simple exception. That is, the present worth of the alternatives must be compared over the same number of years. Okay? And then they must all end at the same time to satisfy the equal service requirement. For example, meron tayong dalawang alternatives, and then yung isang alternative is good for 2 years lang yung life niya, while the other one is, let's say, 5 years. So if we compute the present worth of the cash flows of these two alternatives as is, no, so wala tayong babaguhin, we might get a result na, let's say, mas maliit yung makukuha or masosolve natin na cost for the first alternative. Kasi 2 years lang naman yon, so maliit lang yung magiging cost natin. Unlike doon sa second alternative, which is 5 years. Now that is not the correct way to do this analysis. In order for us to choose correctly the more economical choice, we should compare both of the alternatives over the same number of years. Paano ba natin yun gagawin? Now, the equal service requirement is satisfied by using either of these two approaches. First, compare the present worth of alternatives over a time period equal to the least common multiple, or LCM, of their estimated lives. Okay? So, for example, yung first alternative natin is good for 2 years, and then yung second example or second alternative naman natin is 5 years yung life niya. So yung least common multiple nilang dalawa, least common multiple ng 2 and 5, that will be 10. Therefore, we need to analyze both of the alternatives for a 10-year period. Now, how can we do that? So for this approach, yung LCM approach, the first cost of an alternative is reinvested at the beginning of each life cycle. Kasi uulit-ulitin natin to, no? So for one cycle, that is 2. So next naman, 2 ulit, and then 2 ulit up to 10 years. At the beginning of each cycle, we will invest or reinvest the first cost. So mag-incur tayo ng first cost dito at the start or at the beginning of each life cycle. Ngayon naman, yung estimated salvage value is also accounted for at the end of each life cycle. So, at the end of each life cycle, dito, may salvage value, dito ulit, dito ulit, dito ulit. So, at the end of each life cycle, meron tayong ilalagay na salvage value. So, this approach, yung LCM approach, can only be applied assuming that the cash flows of each alternative can be repeated over each life cycle in exactly the same manner. So, walang pagbabago, no? Even if we repeat the alternative multiple times. Now, for the second approach, compare the present worth of alternatives using a specified study period of n years. This approach does not necessarily consider the useful life of an alternative. So, in our next example here, we will apply these two approaches. A contractor plans to purchase a new heavy equipment for its future projects. Two manufacturers offer the estimates below. So, for vendor A and then vendor B, we have the first cost, annual maintenance and operating cost, salvage value, and the life of each equipment offered by the two vendors. First question, determine which vendor should be selected on the basis of a present worth comparison if the minimum attractive rate of return is 15% per year. Second, the contractor has a standard practice of evaluating all options over a 5-year period. Now, if a study period of 5 years is used and the salvage values are not expected to change, which vendor should be selected? Take note na yung vendor A, yung ina-offer niya na equipment, has a expected life of 6 years. And then yung second vendor naman, vendor B, 9 years yung life niya. So, comparing alternatives with different lives, ito yung gagawin natin. For the first question, since the equipment has different lives, comparing them over the least common multiple of 18 years is necessary. Again, bakit 18? Kasi yun yung least common multiple ng 6 and 9. Now, for life cycles after the first cost is repeated in year 0 of each new cycle. So, meron ulit first cost doon sa beginning ng every cycle. Now, take note that the year 0 of each new cycle is also the last year of the previous cycle. For the first vendor, yung beginning ng second and third cycle niya will be at year 6 and at year 12 respectively. And then for the second vendor, so 9 years yun, so we will simply apply this alternative twice. So yung beginning ng second life cycle niya will be at year 9. So ito yung cash flow diagram nilang dalawa. Now using this cash flow diagram, we will calculate the present worth at 15% over 18 years. For the first alternative, we have the first cost na 15,000. Again, negative no kasi cost siya, mawawala sa atin yung pera na yun. And the next, we have the second first cost, kumbaga. So, yung first cost niya at the second life or at the second cycle. So, yung present worth niya, we will simply apply the single payment present worth factor, P/F. So, again, using 15% and then 6 years, yung N natin dito. And then, i-add natin yung salvage value at the end of the first cycle. So, at this same period then. That will be 1,000 multiplied by the single payment present worth factor, P/F. Again, 15% yung interest rate and then for 6 years. And then for the first cost of the third life cycle, so we have 15,000 ulit. But this is at year 12 na, no? Yung N natin dito will be 12. Same pa rin, P/F yung factor na gagamitan natin. And then we'll add the salvage value also at this same period. So this is the salvage value at the end of the second life cycle. And then lastly, we are going to add the salvage value at the end of the third life cycle. So that is at year 18. And then, ilalagay din natin dito yung annual operating cost or the annual maintenance and operating cost, which is 3,500 each year. So that is for 18 years. So we are going to use the P/A factor. In total, yung present worth ng lahat ng cash flows for the first alternative will be equal to $45,036. So take note, negative ulit siya, no? Ibig sabihin, cost siya. And then applying the same procedure for the second alternative. Again, tingnan nyo lang yung cash flow diagram para hindi kayo mahirapan. So the present worth of all the cash flows for the second alternative will be equal to $41,384. Again, negative, ibig sabihin cost siya. Ibig sabihin, obviously, yung alternative na may pinakamaliit na cost, yun yung pipiliin natin. So, taking a look at these two results, that will be vendor B. Okay? So, pipiliin natin yung vendor B kasi mas maliit yung present worth ng mga costs niya. Now, for the second question, we will perform our analysis over a period of 5 years lang. So, yun yung tinatawag na study period. For a 5-year study period, no cycle repeats are necessary. No, kasi lahat naman ng original life nila is greater than 5 years. But again, we will simply analyze them for 5 years lang. Ito yung magiging calculations natin for the present worths of the two alternatives. For the first alternative, we have here the first cost na 15,000 and then the annual maintenance and operating cost na 3,500. So this will be for 5 years lang, ano? So that will be P/A 15% yung interest rate and then yung period natin is 5 years. And then we are going to add the salvage value. Sabi dun sa problem, hindi daw nagbago. Yung salvage value, ano? Same pa rin. That will be 1,000 times the P/F factor and then 15% and then again for N periods lang siya. So after 5 years lang. Therefore, the present worth of the first alternative will be equal to negative $26,235.37. And then same for the second alternative. The present worth will be equal to yung first cost, 18,000. And then, yung annual maintenance and operating cost na 3,100 per year. So, this is for 5 years ulit. And then, the salvage value na 2,000. So, that will be positive. Multiplied by the P/F factor with 15% interest and then for 5 years. Now, the present worth of the second alternative will be equal to negative $27,397.33. So as you can see, vendor A na ngayon yung pipiliin natin, no? Based on the smaller present worth value of the cost. This means that the shortened study period of 5 years has caused a switch in the economic decision. So merong ganitong mga cases, no? Depende sa analysis na ipe-perform nyo. Kanina, sa first question natin, we evaluated the two alternatives for their whole useful life. And then, we have chosen vendor B as the better alternative. Ngayon naman, for a study period of only 5 years, lumalabas na si vendor A, yung mas better. So, in situations such as this, the standard practice of using a fixed study period should be carefully examined to ensure that the proper or appropriate approach, that is the LCM or fixed study period, is used to satisfy the equal service requirement. Ibig sabihin, you need to examine or study it more carefully. So you have to take a look at some other factors, no? Maybe non-economic factors to take into consideration so that you can choose the better alternative. Okay, next we are going to talk about capitalized cost analysis. Now, many public sector projects such as bridges, dams, highways, and toll roads, railroads, and hydroelectric and other power generation facilities have very long expected useful lives. Usually up to 40 years, 50 years, or 70 years, ganun no, napakahaba. Now, a perpetual or infinite life is the effective planning horizon. So, ibig sabihin yung study period natin dito is infinite number of years. Okay? So, although limited lang naman talaga siya, let's say 50 years nga or 70 years, napakahaba na actually nun. Now, to make our calculations easier, sometimes ina-assume na lang na yung useful life nila is for perpetuity na or forever. Now, we have a special term na ginagamit for the present worth for these cases. So, we call that the capitalized cost or CC. So, this is the present worth of a project that has a very long life or when the planning horizon is considered very long or infinite. Now, the formula to calculate the capitalized cost is simply derived from the present worth relation, P equal to A, multiplied by the uniform series present amount factor, so that is P slash A, and then I% for n years, where n is infinite, so infinity, yung time periods natin dito. Recall nyo lang yung equation for the P slash A factor, that is 1 plus I raised to n minus 1 over I times 1 plus I raised to n. First na gagawin natin dito is we are going to divide both the numerator and denominator by 1 plus I raised to n. So now our equation will be of this form. We have P equal to A times 1 minus 1 over 1 plus I raised to n over I. Now as n approaches infinity, itong second term natin in the numerator approaches 0. Okay, kasi habang lumalaki yung n natin, yung denominator dito magiging malaki-malaki. So this fraction will approach 0. Now, the symbols P and PW are replaced with CC. Kasi nga, capitalized cost yung mas preferred na term, no? For the present worth of a project that has a very long life. So, yung maiiwan na lang dito sa formula natin will be P equal to A over I. So, again, replace natin yung P by CC. So, we have CC or the capitalized cost equal to A over I. And then, yung A value can also be termed the annual worth, AW. Therefore, yung formula natin for the capitalized cost can also be expressed as CC equal to AW over I. Okay. Ngayon naman, take note na yung cash flows in a capitalized cost, so cost, revenue, savings, yung mga ganun na cash flow, are usually of two types. So, meron tayong tinatawag na recurring or also periodic and then non-recurring. So, an annual operating cost of, let's say, $50,000 and a rework cost estimated at $40,000 every 12 years are example of recurring cash flow. Kasi again, annual operating cost. So, every year siya umuulit. So, recurring cash flow siya. And then, yung $40,000 every 12 years. So, every 12 years merong $40,000. So, umuulit siya. Therefore, that is recurring. Examples of non-recurring cash flows naman are the initial investment amount in year 0. So, iisa lang yun, one cost lang yun. And then, a one-time cash flow estimate at future times. So, for example, 500,000 in fees or in cost 2 years from now. Iisa lang yun, single amount or single cash flow lang siya. Hindi na siya umuulit. So, non-recurring siya. Okay? So yung procedure natin to determine the capitalized cost for an infinite sequence of cash flows is as follows. First, draw the cash flow diagram showing all non-recurring or yung one-time cash flows and at least 2 cycles of all recurring or periodic cash flows. Next, find the present worth of all non-recurring amounts. So non-recurring cash flows, no? So yung mga one-time payment lang, mga ganon. Next, find the A value through one life cycle of all recurring amounts. And then, add this to all other uniform amounts A occurring in years 1 through infinity. So itong result na to, this is the total equivalent uniform annual worth. And then next, we will simply divide the annual worth, yung in our previous step, by the interest rate I to obtain a capitalized cost value. And then finally, we are simply going to add the two capitalized cost values obtained in steps 2 and step 4. Okay? So drawing the cash flow diagram is more important in capitalized cost calculations than elsewhere because it helps separate the non-recurring and recurring amounts. Okay? So again, napaka-importante ng cash flow diagram. For our final example here, a city has just installed new software to change and track toll fees for vehicles passing through its newly built skyway. The mayor wants to know the total equivalent cost of all future costs incurred to purchase the software system. So if the new system will be used for the indefinite future, find the equivalent cost now. So ito yung capitalized cost value niya. And then for each year hereafter, o yung equivalent uniform annual worth value. The system has an installed cost of $150,000 and an additional cost of $50,000 after 10 years. The annual software maintenance contract cost is $5,000 for the first 4 years and then $8,000 naman thereafter. In addition, there is expected to be a recurring major upgrade cost of $15,000 every 13 years. Assume that the interest rate is 5% per year. Okay, so we are simply going to apply the 5-step procedure to find the capitalized cost. So again, first, let us draw the cash flow diagram muna. Based doon sa mga given na cash flow sa problem, ito yung magiging itsura ng cash flow diagram natin. Next, we are going to solve for the present worth of the non-recurring cost of $150,000 now, and then yung $50,000 in year 10 at an interest rate of 5%. So, ito yung magiging value ng capitalized cost natin. So, let's label that CC sub 1. Again, present worth lang ito mga kaibigan, no? So, walang pinagbago. The way we solve it is still the same. Yung 150,000, that is at year 0. Therefore, automatic na to. This is at present. And then yung 50,000 naman, that is, so after 10 years pa daw yun. So, kukunin lang natin yung present worth niya. We will simply apply the single payment present worth factor, P/F, 5% interest, and then 10 years yung N. This will be equal to negative $180,695.66. Okay, and then next, the 15,000 recurring cost is converted to an annual value over the first cycle of 13 years. And then yung capitalized cost CC sub 2 is obtained at I equal to 5% per year. Okay, so we will simply use the A/F factor dito. Kasi hinahanap natin yung A, we are given the future amount na 15,000 at the end of every 13 years. So, hanapin lang natin yung equivalent uniform amount niya. So, that will be equal to negative $846.84. And then, to obtain the capitalized cost, we will simply divide this by the interest rate na 5%. So, this will be negative $16,936.80. Next, hanapin naman natin yung capitalized cost ng mga annual software maintenance cost natin. There are several ways to convert the annual software maintenance cost series to A and CC values. A straightforward method is to first, let us consider the negative $5,000 as an A series. So to get the capitalized cost, we will simply divide this by the interest rate na 5%. So this will be equal to negative $100,000. Next, yung step-up maintenance cost na $3,000, okay? So recall na initially 5,000 and then naging 8,000 siya starting from the 5th year and then forever na. So itong difference na 3,000 is converted to a capitalized cost in year 4. So take note, year 4. And then from year 4, Bali, dadalhin natin siya sa present, so we will simply multiply it by the single payment present worth factor na P/F. Okay? So again, to get the capitalized cost in year 4, that will simply be 3,000 divided by the interest rate na 5%. And then, to get the present worth, we will simply multiply this by P/F factor with interest rate na 5%. And then, yung number of periods N natin will be equal to 4. So in total, this will be equal to negative $49,362.15. Okay, and then finally, the total capitalized cost is then obtained by simply adding the 4 component CC values. So we have these values, and then yung total na capitalized cost natin will be equal to negative $346,994.61. And then for the second question, to determine the annual worth value forever, so since meron na tayong total na capitalized cost dito, we will simply use this formula, CC equal to AW over I, and then solving for the annual worth, we will simply multiply the capitalized cost by the interest rate. This will be equal to $17,349.73. Ibig sabihin, the city has committed the equivalent of about $17,350 per year forever, no? Forever siya, to operate and maintain the toll management software. Okay, so that's it, no? Now for the comparison of two alternatives on the basis of capitalized cost, simply use the procedure above to find the A value and then yung capitalized cost for each alternative. Since the capitalized cost represent the total present worth, so present worth din naman yun, so the total present worth of financing and maintaining a given alternative forever, the alternatives will automatically be compared for the same number of years, which is infinity. Okay? So yan kasi yung time period natin for the capitalized cost is forever or infinity yung N natin. So same lahat ng alternatives. It will be analyzed over N periods, which is infinity. Now the alternative with a smaller capitalized cost will represent the more economical one and should be selected. Now, if a finite life alternative, for example 5 years, is compared to one with an indefinite or very long life, capitalized cost can also be used. To determine the capitalized cost for the finite life alternative, simply calculate the equivalent A value for one life cycle and then divide yun lang ng interest rate I. Balik ka pa din doon sa CC equal to A over I na formula. Yun na yung i-compare nyo, yung capitalized cost for each alternative. Okay? So that's it for this video guys. Hopefully meron kayo natutulang bago. So see you on the next one.